Welcome back to the program. The Ballon d'Or Awards is football's biggest night, honoring the top players in the world. But this year, the moment Norway's Ada Hegerberg was crowned the world's best female footballer was quickly overshadowed. Alex Morgan in the Cube has more on this story. Alex?
Well, Tessa, let's go back to what Ada Hegerberg herself posted on Instagram. What a night. Because, yes, there are complications to this story I will come on to. But for her, this was a huge achievement. Here she is. She's 23 years old, holding the first ever Ballon d'Or given to a woman. The Champs-Élysées in the background, the Arc de Triomphe. It was a huge night for her in Paris and for women's football. And let me tell you why she is such a star. Just look at her track record, her scoreboard. With her team, Olympique Lyonnais, they are 3 times consecutive champions in the Champions League. 3 consecutive titles there. She herself scoring 53 goals last season, and in the Champions League setting a record for the number of goals she has scored. She is just 23. She's originally, of course, from Norway, but has taken on a leading role in Olympique Lyonnais. But that moment where she did receive her award did have a controversial twist when the co-host of the event, Martin Solveig, the French DJ seen here, asked her if she knew how to twerk. Now, at that moment, she seems to look a bit uncomfortable. She steps away a bit before the pair eventually do a couple of dance moves on stage. But people quick to jump on this moment. This question that they're saying, well, did you ask male stars a question like that? Where's the questions about football? And really, some of the top names took offence at this, saying it was unacceptable, including Andy Murray, of course, British tennis star Andy Murray, saying, why do women still have to put up with that? And then a rude word, this on his Instagram story, personally publishing this. You can see how strongly he felt about it, saying, well, what questions did they ask the male stars, like Mbappe, for example? And at the bottom he says, look, to everyone who thinks people are just overreacting or this is a joke, it wasn't. I have been involved in sport my whole life, and the level of sexism, it's unreal. Now, it's a pretty strong message from Andy Murray, echoed throughout the social media sphere. But Martin Solveig, I think, quite quick to notice he had said something wrong. He posted a picture with him and Ada saying, look, I apologised, I meant no offence. Ada accepted that, and indeed to cameras afterwards she said, well, I didn't take it as a sexual, inappropriate comment at the time. But at the end here, look at this line. Most importantly, congratulations to Ada. And that is the message that she wants us to take away. And indeed that we should take away from this. The first female winner of the Ballon d'Or. This, the message from Ada in her acceptance speech, saying, it is important to show young girls that they can believe in themselves, and I hope they are inspired by this. They are the future. A champion, not just of football in, of course, France, but now on the global stage. Ada there wanting us to take that message away, Tessa, not perhaps the comments about twerking.
All right, thank you for that, Alex, and our team in the Cube. And joining me to talk about this, we have Zara Todd in the studio from the European Disability Forum of the Women's Committee. We have the Irish Independent MEP with the ALDE Group, Marianne Harkin. And we also have Jeanne Pont, a parliamentary assistant and the founder of an anti-sexual harassment blog here in the Parliament. I guess, Jeanne, I'll start with you. We've talked before about sexual harassment. You know, a lot of the thing that came out here is it was just a joke and was understood as a joke. How do we put this in context? Is a go-to excuse?
Of course, there are no excuse of sexism, because when you excuse and you give a justification of sexism by saying it's a joke or it's my culture or it's just my age or it's my way of acting, you are making you're making a really bad situation of what is sexism. And sexism is something big, that sexism has also consequences. It's not a normal behaviors. It's not inappropriate behaviors. Sexism is just a fertile ground for sexual harassment and for sexual assault. And this is, of course, really annoying to also have to deal with that, because what will think the young girls that they want to play football and what they want to be involved? It's also coming back to women's body and appearance and not taking us seriously.
Sure.
And this is a huge backlash against women's rights, because the reaction on the social media and saying they overreacted, it's not not something important. It's something that is really terrible.
And Marianne, I mean, this is football is a male-dominated industry. So is politics. You have been in it for a while. What is your take on? Has it improved in any way, or are we still 2018 and this is still the same case?
Well, you see, he didn't ask her, could she dance? He asked her, could she twerk? And that was an entirely different question with certain sexual connotations. Let's be clear. Now, he probably thought it was a joke. So what does that tell you? It tells you about mindset. It tells you about how people think. And Andy Murray got it right. The level of sexism in sport is just totally unacceptable. I see it in my own country. So what he thought was a joke, in fact, showed a mindset of how people think. He was using, sexualizing the language he was using. Twerking is very different.
All right, and because another topic that we are following today, we are going to Iceland now, because there are also calls for 6 politicians in Iceland to resign over sexist as well and offensive comments. Now, the opposition MPs were recorded without their knowledge having a conversation at a bar. Well, the conversation included sexually charged language and profanity, and the politicians also mocked a former colleague's disability by imitating the sound of a seal. Now, the recording spread quickly on social media after an anonymous eavesdropper sent it to the media. But despite ongoing protests, more of those involved have resigned. In fact, one MP, a former Prime Minister Gunnlaugsson, took to Facebook to decry the invasion of his privacy. All right, we have heard this story. I think you knew in particular. I'd like to bring up the politician that they were talking about. It is her name is Herda Harald's daughter. She was a former politician. She was a former MP, and she has this condition called brittle bone disease. So Freya, this is the politician they were referring to, who when they were imitating the sound of a seal, I think there, and they said that this was actually they denied that, saying this was the sound of a chair moving. All right, let's talk about this, because you knew Freya personally.
So Freya is a friend of mine, and I've spoken to her since this has happened. One of the things that really annoys her about this is it's being seen solely as a disability mockery, whereas actually for her, it was said in the context of other sexist comments. So it's not just about disability, it is also sexism in the extreme, and in this particular instance, she has been dehumanised in sexism and disableism. So for her, what has happened is life-changing. She's now a news story. That's not what she existed to do. What is really distressing for her is when people have started to talk to her about what's happened, she has been told that it was because she was annoying people, because she was having a say and being an activist and being a feminist, that she brought attention onto herself, and that is what has caused these politicians to react in this way. So there's been a lot of justification of why these politicians have said this.
And, I think that's one of the justifications that brought up, and that's upsetting Freya. But another that we have to address is the response of the politicians saying, well, look, this was a private conversation. This is like locker room talk, and you don't necessarily mean what you say when you are in that private space. What do you think as a politician? What is the decorum?
If you're a private person, your conversations are private. If you're a public person, it's entirely different. And I mean, when you told me about what other politicians have subsequently said to her, I mean, I almost started to cry. It is horrific to think that because this woman is bringing attention to disability and to feminist issues, that in some way she's a target. I mean, have we lost our reason? And when you think of a country like Iceland that scores so well on many of the gender equality issues, when you're a public person, you're a public person. Yes, there may be an issue about recording somebody in public, but those were the views expressed. I mean, I'm rarely shocked, but I'm shocked by the response of other politicians.
What do you think about that, in not the content of what they said, but the argument of this is an invasion of privacy, and what was said there? It might reflect one opinion, but it was said in a privacy context, private context.
For me, I perfectly share what you just said, because when you have a mandate, when you're elected by citizens, men and women who voted for you, you cannot be any private person. And even though you're a private person, you're an individual, you cannot forget that you have a mandate and you're elected, you're representing a mandate of a society, a government, and there is absolutely no justification. And also because in some work environment and politics, the European Parliament, for example, the boundaries in between what represents work, mission, and what represents private time is really thin. Like when you have delegations going like abroad for long times, when you travel with politicians, does it mean that is private life and you can do everything you want? Of course not.
This was said in a public space.
Absolutely.
Right.
As a starting point. So it was said in a public space where anyone could have overheard. Freya already experiences discrimination because of how she looks and because of how people perceive that. Now, for me, the fact that it was politicians saying this makes it worse, because if you choose to hold a public office, there are certain expectations of modelling behaviour for other citizens. So if they have said this, it makes it acceptable for other people to say.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that Freya has said very clearly, this is not the first time that she's experienced this kind of thing. But these people have power, and it is abuse of power to pick on somebody who has less power than you do.
Certainly important issues to be
The
brought
last
up.
politician
Right,
that I remember who mocked somebody was Donald Trump during his election.
Right, and we saw that. Indeed, as I was saying, it's really sensitive issues to have to bring to light all these issues that we're talking about.